Alright, so why do the knees go in during a squat? Well, one of the most simplest answers, and obvious one, is weakness. Weakness where? In the hips. We know that, the glutes. But it actually has a lot to do with the adductors. Some people will say that when the knees come in, it's because your adductors are tight. That's also true, but they are also weak at the same time, because when you drop below parallel or you get close to parallel, the adductors act as abductors at the same time. They rotate the femur. And I want to say it's the adductor magnus. I can't remember exactly, but the way the adductors function in full extension standing up versus going to a full squat, they have a different function, or a different primary function, I should say. So how do you strengthen these muscles so that you can prevent your knees from going in? Well, the first thing to understand is that you just want your knees to stay in a very neutral position. That means between somewhere between the middle toes when you're squatting. You want them to line up like that. One thing I did hear that was kind of like a shock almost, or maybe a kind of never thought of this, is Dan Green. He talked about how you want your knees to come in just a little bit. And there's a reason for this, because it allows you to get more quad activation. So taking this further, when your knees are going too much, the reason why your knees are going too much is that your quadriceps want to pick up the weight. So once you get to the bottom and you push your knees out as far as you can, right, it actually can make the exercise much harder. It's sort of what it does, it shifts the strength or the weight into the hips, hamstrings, glutes, the posterior chain. And when your knees collapse at the bottom of a squat and you try to get out the hole from the squat position, the knees will start to collapse because, for several reasons. One, hips and hamstrings, glutes aren't strong enough, and or the quads want to finish the movement. So if you let your knees to come in, what happens, it actually allows for you to come out the hole faster using quadriceps. This is the reason why that if you take too wide of a stance on the squat, it's actually going to be a little bit harder for you, or for some people. In some places, if you go too close, it actually might be a little bit easier for you. So if you have really big quads, or you just have very strong quadriceps, and you're very good at using those muscles, you're going to typically benefit by having a little bit more narrow stance, because that allows for more quad activation, whereas a wider stance will allow for more hip activation. The thing to understand is that there's no one better way. I would say there is a better way for your leverages when you're trying to powerlift, but when in training, you're going to want to do a mixture of both. So do wider stance squats to get more hip involvement, closer stance squats to get more quadricep involvement, or I should say more quadricep dominant exercise. Now, one thing I do know is like an Olympic style squat, like a high bar squat with the feet close, that gets more quad involved. So that's a really good way to kind of get good quad activation, or a good replacement for front squats, because I know a lot of people out there are not very good at front squats. That's including me. They don't have the flexibility to hold a good front rack, or it's just an uncomfortable position. Now, if you have the ability to do front squats, I just say just do front squats. But if you don't, one simple solution to kind of get a similar accessory movement or a training effect is to have your feet so that they're close together, or relatively close together, and that you have and that you are focusing, keeping the bar a little bit, basically don't put the bar all the way back on your back, but put it in a position where it's higher up that forces you to stay more upright. Because a lot of the time when people squat, or squat heavy, especially in powerlifting, they put it on a low bar, put the bar all the way back, that way they can get more leverage out of their hips. So understand the reason why your knees come in is because of weakness in the hips, and also it happens because the knees, because your quads want to do more of the work. It could be a combination of both. Understand that the human body is very complicated in the sense that it can, and is very adaptive, so that it will do what is necessary to basically keep itself safe. And there's so many different ways of looking at this, because, if you can get out the hole really quick, I mean, it makes sense to use more of your quads and have your knees going. The only thing is that in training, to have your knees going in towards past the big toe puts a lot of stress on the ACL. But if they go in a little bit but stay fairly neutral, that's okay. It's just a matter of kind of like where you're weak and where you're tight, and kind of what areas of your body that you need to work on the most. So those are my thoughts. Thanks for watching. Click like if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Share my video if you think this would be a really good informational piece for someone that would better understand kind of the knees in, knees out idea when it comes to squatting.